Detroit, Detroit is different. Detroit, Detroit is different. Culture and life we live in. Detroit, Detroit is different. Detroit, Detroit is different. Detroit, Detroit is different. Culture and life we live in. Detroit, Detroit is different.
Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And in studio is someone else that tells stories with the pen and so much more. Author and definitely a journalist, but from that lens, talking about a lot of the culture of life. So, here at Detroit is Different, we're healing community through culture with events and media. So to connect with somebody that actually was kind of already had an eye on Detroit is Different before we met at a workshop series about the culture of Detroit food and much more. Darralynn, how are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you, Kari?
All is well. You see that smile and that energy. See, you as I say, transversing, grabbing culture and sharing them stories for people. What's that like for you?
Oh, it's been an amazing career. It's been an amazing career. I've been a journalist my first article was written in 1990, in the 1900s. So I've been writing for over 25 years on Black culture.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. And it's that much stuff to write about with us. Back
Oh
in
my God, are you
1990.
kidding me? Yes.
I
I
know.
started writing for The Source. That's what I started.
Oh,
with The Source
man.
magazine.
I know. So much you could learn about back then.
Absolutely.
Actually, my reading started with The Source.
For real?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, when I independently really wanted
When
to
you
do
picked
it.
up a magazine.
Yes.
I love that. I love
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
How else can you find out about who's the king of New York hip hop?
Well, back then, before we had social media,
Yes.
you would have to pick up a magazine.
You sure did.
Absolutely.
Sure did, and so much, how could I find out about Suave House Records and other things?
Okay, all of them, all of the Black-owned labels, all of the independent artists that you never heard of. You would have to pick up a magazine and read about it.
Yeah. Yep.
That was how I started my career.
So we definitely got to start with the Detroit story, the
Okay.
classic one.
What's the classic Detroit story?
How many generations deep? What brought your people to the D?
Oh, wow. My people were from Vicksburg, Mississippi. It's so funny. I just interviewed Winona Bynum, and she's over the food policy. She does community food policy. She's the executive director. And we were talking about how many people have started gardening since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling her that my family was from Vicksburg, Mississippi, and they came here in the 50s, and how my grandmother never had a garden in her backyard because she associated that to sharecropping. But now this generation, I feel like when I grow things, I'm very empowered. So we were just talking about how the mindset is different between my grandmother's generation and my generation, growing in our backyards.
Very much so. And as you talk about Vicksburg, I got some people from Vicksburg as well. A small Mississippi town on the river.
Absolutely.
Vicksburg, man. It's my grandma Vel that just had a birthday March 12th. Sent her some flowers and everything. I was like, Grandma
Happy
Vel,
birthday,
what up?
Grandma. Happy
I know.
birthday.
Everything's coming from one of them old school pots, too.
Absolutely.
You'd be surprised what a cast iron pot can cook. And he'd be like, you making eggs in that? I'm making eggs in that for sure, Mississippi, So
Yes.
definitely, and some other folks too. So Mississippi
My
is not
family, yeah. Okay.
one of those spaces where people usually come up this way. Usually they go further west. What brought your people to Detroit from Vicksburg?
Work.
Mm.
Work. My granddaddy worked with Chrysler for over 30 years. He got one of them nice gold watches after 35 years. So
That was back in the day when you actually kept a job for 35 years.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But he raised 8 children.
8 children.
My mom is the oldest, and yeah, I went to college off of their sharecropping and that factory working. So yeah, so that's where my family's from.
Definitely. Okay. All right. So did you go down there as a kid?
All the time. Yeah. My dad's from Ohio, my mom's from Mississippi, and we went to both places in that Cadillac. We all in the back seat.
Okay. Ohio. Where about Ohio?
Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, man.
Dayton, Ohio.
Another city of funk. I love it. I love it. So Dayton, Ohio, if people don't know, it's like definitely a lot of cultural ties between Detroit and Dayton. Because,
Absolutely.
you know, between me and you and everybody I know that I see in Dayton that always be like, Slave and everybody with Roger and all of them. It's like, but they was coming up here to United Sound to get all of that.
I don't know if they was coming to Detroit.
Here we go.
They might be. I don't know. I don't know.
Either way,
a little competition.
Dayton's another one of those chocolate cities for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
Still is.
So what do you remember about Dayton?
Other than my grandma and my granddaddy?
Mm-hmm.
I just remember a lot of really live music because my grandmother was really into the church. So we would go and hear some good singing in Dayton, Ohio. When I'm talking about like choirs like back in the day.
Yeah.
They would sing outside and then they'd march inside to sing inside.
Yeah.
So they get that harmony and get that beat with their hands and their feet. And then the whole church would start stomping and start clapping before anybody would put their hands on the piano. So that's what I remember very specifically about Dayton.
Okay. All right. I was going to say, if you got some Cat Williams stories, we don't. All right. So as we continue that, in Vicksburg.
You going really back. You going back. Okay.
What do you remember about Vicksburg?
That my grandmother's house did not have any running water, any electricity. Yeah. That's what I remember about Vicksburg. A lot of bugs, a lot of outdoor.
Yeah. That's the
and we'd have to walk. Yeah, we'd walk and walk and walk and walk to get to like a party store. But yeah, that's what I remember about Vicksburg.
Oh yeah. As they say, you get some character in places like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was no. Yeah. Oh my God. I feel so old when I remember days without. They didn't have two-way phones. They didn't have. Voicemail or recordings or typewriters, or they didn't have any of that electricity, any of that stuff. So the electricity was made by wood, and they'd put wood in the fire to cook, and they'd light their houses with candles and stuff like that. And this was the 70s.
Yep, definitely.
They go outside to use the bathroom and
outhouses.
So yeah, that's what I remember about Mississippi.
Oh, man.
And my grandmother, before she died, she was like, I want to go back home. And I used to be like, why?
Because that's what you know.
That part.
That's what you know. And then you start,
She in a foreign land in Detroit, yeah. So, yeah.
All those amenities and everything extra.
Okay.
So that brings you here. What neighborhood in Detroit?
Greenfield 8 Mile.
Okay. Greenfield and 8 Mile. That puts you right on the cusp of good old Northland.
Yeah, I just saw that video about what they're doing with Northland. That used to be my hangout spot.
Okay.
When I was growing up.
I got to hear some Northland stories as we've been stacking them at Detroit is different.
I'm trying to remember Northland stories other than the fact that was just where we would meet, where we convene, where we spent our money, where I bought I remember my first album that I bought. I mean.
Oh, what was it?
God, you got to tell how old I am.
What you gonna say?
Parliament's Funkadelic.
Now that's a great first album. I thought you was just embarrassed, like it was. I don't know.
No, it was like 76. It was my first.
Okay.
My very first album. Yeah, that I played till I could not play it anymore.
Okay. All right.
Because them songs would be 10 minutes long. Right?
They definitely. Hey, that's how the funk moves you. Okay. So there you go. You starting in with the funk. And your first album, I love it. I love it. I thought you was just embarrassed, like it was. I don't even know who.
No, it just makes me feel old, but that's okay.
But no,
still the best music.
See,
ever.
George still performing.
George he's still alive and kicking. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The funk not only moves,
it transcends generations.
You got that right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so from there, now I have to go to the neighborhood. What else do you remember about that neighborhood?
What do I remember about my neighborhood specifically is God, all of my best friends lived on the block,
Mm.
which is really different now, obviously, kids growing up. But yeah, my very best friends, Coco and Cece, we grew up together, my best friends. Yeah, we experienced all of our firsts together.
Hmm.
My joy, my passion, my excitement came from outside my house because my house seemed really boring. I'm the only child. That's really why I started writing. That's why I started reading, getting into magazines because I kind of wanted to live a different life. But yeah, most of my excitement came on my block.
Okay. All right. So within that, it was like you, Coco, CC. It already, you see it. It sounds
And I'm Dee Dee, right? I'm Dee Dee.
sounds like a story already. One of those stories. But you said reading was something that captured your mind early as an only child. What were you reading as a kid?
About life outside of Detroit. Yeah, I read a lot about history. I don't know, I was an encyclopedia kid. I
I was going to
loved
ask, were you one of those
encyclopedias.
kids?
I was an encyclopedia kid. And me and my mom bumped heads when I turned maybe like 13. So a lot of my emotional expressions came out in journaling and reading other things because I didn't know how to express myself in a way that did not deal with, taking a pencil to a piece of paper. And that's kind of how I became a writer. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So when did you start creative writing?
I would say high school. One of the shows that I used to watch a lot was the Twilight Zone. And I would recreate Twilight Zone episodes from a Black perspective.
Hilarious. It's like it may just be in America. It's a Twilight Zone being Black in America
From a
itself.
Black perspective, from some crazy ass things that would happen in a Black house.
Can you just share like a little bit of one if you remember anything? This is amazing.
I remember we had a rat in our house, and kind of the rat took on its own personality. And this is in my story.
Mm-hmm.
The rat ended up taking on its own personality, but the rat ended up, because he saw the deficiencies in the family, he took on the deficiencies in the family. He would start cleaning. He would start keeping the bills paid. He would make sure that they had everything because the mom and dad could not keep everything up in the house. So the rat ended up. It was crazy, right?
Nah. I see. I like this.
And the rat ended up giving the father, advice on how to survive, and
Okay. I like this. This is like Twilight Zone meets Fat Albert meets
the PJs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But those were my first stories, and I used to let my mom and my cousins read, and they'd be like, "Girl, you crazy."
Hilarious.
But my imagination was just wild. But it also helped me to write very formulaic because I would look at how back in the day, you would record TV shows just like we record music from the radio. But it was about, okay, I want to learn the formula. How do they write? And I would just follow the formula. And that helps me today to be a freelance journalist. I know I'm jumping, but one of the skills of being a freelance journalist is that you're able to write for multiple publications. And the way that I do that is by following their formula. So that's how I started.
Wow. Okay. All right. So this start into that storytelling and your relationship with books, and it starts early, and that connection, that sounds like you were one of those kids that just poured into that imagination and that creativity all the time. When did you start noticing others taking to your stories and what you were writing?
Oh, wow. It's really depressing, but I wrote my first family obituary when I was like 12. And now I'm the obituary writer. So a good 27 people that have died in my family, I've written their obituary.
Condolences.
Thank you. But that has become my responsibility in my family. So I write celebratory. If someone gets written up in a newsletter or some type of profile, those are very few, but most of the things that I've done. And I do obits for family in Dayton and Mississippi, and I've become I tell people's lives through their obituary.
That's deep.
And that's how I learned my family history too.
Yeah, That is deep because reading obituaries is very.
No, writing them, not reading, writing them.
I'm just saying from the lens of reading it, so I can only imagine what writing it is like.
And then because I collect the pictures too, because they all end up being on my phone too. So yeah.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy.
It is. It's very heavy, but I don't know if I don't know how big your family are, but everybody has a position. Everybody has a role to play. That's been my role. I'm the writer of the family.
Okay. All right. So from 12 on, they just knew. Get some books to her.
Well, they might have known, but I knew. I never, well, I won't say never, but I didn't know writing could be a career for me. I always thought it was something that I did for fun. It was a passion of mine. And my family knew very on. And then my friends started to know because people would ask me to write things for them.
Okay.
I didn't even think of it as a career. I didn't know any writers personally. I knew writers in that profession existed, but how to get there, I never knew. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've definitely, in your span of your career, you've seen so many iterations of changings in that field.
Oh my
I can
God,
only
yeah.
imagine. So at that, now I have to go high school. Where did you go?
Cast Tech.
CT.
CT.
All right. What was your CT experience like?
It was amazing. My counselor, Miss Hall, shout out to Miss Hall, she introduced me to historically black colleges. I didn't even know what a HBCU was. Not that I love my family, but they were not very pro-black. I became pro-black when I went to Cass.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So pro-black at Cass, HBCU. Where do you choose?
Spelman.
Ah.
It was Spelman or Howard. And then I had a cousin that went to nursing school in Atlanta. And once I visited her and visited the campus, it was all over.
What era ATL?
What era?
Yeah, is this like mid 80s, early 80s?
So I went to school
80s?
in 89.
Late 80s.
Yeah, I went to school in 89, came out in 93, yeah.
Okay, so late 80s Atlanta. That is
The start of the Freaknik. The start of Freaknik, yeah.
The start of a lot of culture shifting and saying that, okay, Atlanta is the place to be if you're black.
That came a little bit later, but we were developing it.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the start. It's Dominique Wilkins.
Yeah, Dominique. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Deion Sanders, Andre Rison.
The boxer, what's his name? Holyfield.
LaFace Records.
LaFace
starting.
Yep, LaFace Records.
All in that 89, the time when you're there.
When I'm there, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the culture of Atlanta. And how did you take that in? Because this is the other thing that kind of does exist. I got family from Atlanta. You have people that came to Atlanta around that time, and then you have people that are from Atlanta. The Fight Night miniseries that was produced by Kevin Hart and
I remember that. Not Don Cheadle. It was Samuel Jackson.
Samuel Jackson's
Elijah
in it.
B.
Don
Hudson.
Cheadle's in it. Will Packer produces that with Kevin Hart. Is a great snapshot of old Atlanta, as I guess you would say, like the Atlanta. That's.
Did you remember Twa? Yeah, remember those movies and what was it? Chocolate City.
Yes. Yeah. So it's that, and then you have like people that come to Atlanta, which it's a culture within its own, but it's a little bit different. How did you take?
And then the AUC, it's its own culture.
That's a whole nother thing
because we were enclosed in the projects.
You got
they
that
basically
right.
told us, don't go to the projects. Yeah, we're our own city. We're our own community. Yeah, which is really disconnected from Atlanta in some ways too.
And and that's why I was going to ask, what was your take on Atlanta culture? How did you take to it, especially being from a chocolate city like Detroit?
Ooh, Detroit had a whole lot of respect in Atlanta. So just coming to Atlanta, saying we're from Detroit, demanded some respect because they had a fear of people from Detroit, right? So Detroiters hung together. You know, there were state clubs and city clubs, so we kind of hung together on campus. We were big in house music at the time. A lot of the people that came to Atlanta were into hip hop. We were in the house. So we developed our own community, at least the first 2 years. A lot of the people that I even hung out with were from Indiana, Ohio, the Midwest. We had, I don't know, we had a work ethic that was really different than some of the other students. I don't know why, but we were the ones that was in the cafeteria at 4 a.m. We were the ones that was in the library to like 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. The Midwesterners, I don't know, we didn't sleep as much, but we kept a lot of the house music, the clubs, and the house. I was a house head until I finally relinquished my support to hip hop.
Hilarious.
I was a house head.
So right there, so then you shift. Okay, 'cause I was gonna say you already mentioned the source, and I'm like, that's different than house. Though we love.
Oh
house.
yeah, for sure.
I mean,
So my first job with a magazine. Have you heard of Upscale magazine?
Mhm.
So my very first job was with Upscale right out of college, and Upscale was owned by another Spelman woman, Sheila Browner. Shout out to Sheila. She told me and taught me that magazine writing was a career. I didn't even realize that it was. And I had gone through 4 years of college as an English major, thinking some way, somehow I was going to be a reporter or a journalist, but I didn't really know that there were jobs that existed inside of magazines. Mind you, I was so naive. You don't really know what's out there in those opportunities until you get in the industry. And she really showed me how to use a mouse, how to interview, how to collect information, how to research, how to formulate an article, how to tell a story from beginning to end, how to make it concise, how to edit. She taught me everything that I knew really about magazine writing. And she was the one that gave me the confidence to say, you need to write for other magazines. You can't just write for us. Yeah.
well, shout out to her.
Shout out to Sheila Browner. Shout out.
So let me frame Upscale as I've uplifted before. One of my biggest hobbies is collecting old magazines.
Really?
Especially old Black magazines.
Really?
Some of them. Yeah, definitely. So I have a couple Upscales.
We have a lot in common then.
So part of it is, though I know it's a journalist's take on what was happening at the time, it's still a snapshot of the culture and the taste and the sensibilities of what was happening at the time.
Especially in Atlanta.
When you pull out a quote, when you pull out quotes from the people, you're getting a different tone, the way they're speaking and the pulse. Because as they say, his story is written by who writes his story, right?
Absolutely.
Whereas if you can get a series of different magazines, especially around, like I have the centennial edition of Ebony. So if you stack the centennial edition of Ebony around 1976 with the Time magazine around 1976 and then the Playboy magazine around 1976.
Shout out to Playboy.
Together, you can get a tone of like, this is like some of where a Black perspective was. This is somewhere where a pop culture perspective was. This is somewhere where like a news perspective was. And I'm not walking in saying I know exactly, but it's better than just sitting watching one take from like Oliver Stone about what that was. Though I appreciate Oliver Stone's take on it as well. So
well, especially if you're a really fan of an artist, you know, you kind of get to see different dimensions of them. If you pay attention to the writers, I don't know if you ever did, but an artist will have a conversation with a white journalist, and it'd be completely different than the conversation that they have with a Black journalist.
Very much so.
Shout out to Ebony. I want to mention RIP to Junior Bridgman, who passed away, the publisher of Ebony magazine. Shout out to him.
Yeah. Definitely condolences, and so many other giants. When the news publications, especially when you study the history of like the Johnson publishings and those early jets, as I tell people, it's like the early jets was tabloids in a lot of ways. Like some of the stories, it's like kind of in shocking of its day type tabloids. It's like, you know, can your woman have two jobs and you not work? It's just like, what is going on?
I mean, think about how revolutionary the Beauty of the Week was, right?
Yes, definitely.
It made Black men get read
Yes.
magazines.
Hey, there you go. You go straight for that
Subscriptions,
page.
yeah. The
Yes.
women didn't keep the magazines. It was the men that kept the Jets, right?
The
Jet
Jet.
magazine.
Yeah, and then also just in the array of that Johnson Publishing. So it's Ebony, Essence, and Jet collectively. Essence still holding on to this day. I remember I was walking through CVS the other day and I saw the Tyra Banks photo with Essence, and what Essence has become now different than where Essence was even before. So even tracking a story of an Essence in the 90s or early 2000s to today, you just see the tone of the story change.
Well, if you
the
know,
voice change as well.
Essence only publishes six physical magazines a year. So Essence is more known, at least around the world, for their events versus their magazines. And it's unfortunate because they've had to be able to sustain themselves. So they make way more money from the Festival of Culture, which happens every 4th of July in New Orleans, or the Women in Hollywood. They make way more money in those event spaces than they do in publishing a magazine. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how it is, yeah.
And it's still something about having that paper and opening a magazine because it's captured. I look back and I think to myself, like, man, if I could find those old sources I always used to have, man. So
I have a lot, so we'll have to collaborate, but I'll never give my magazines away.
I got you.
I keep telling my daughter, you're going to have to burn these things, but I can't. I go through, I do these vision boards every year, and it's like cutting a piece of my skin when I be cutting into my magazines, but I'm like,
No, it's like
20 years old, I guess I can get rid of it, yeah. I even have like Honey, Heart and Soul, all of those old publications. I don't know if you remember Trace magazine.
I don't remember that one.
Savoy.
I do remember that. A lot of Savoys. So with this, I'm gonna go back a little bit, and I'm framing Spelman because we talked about Atlanta, your Spelman experience. And you talked about studying and staying there in English and also connecting to the other reality of what Spelman provides. It provides a larger lens of what Black life in America can be.
Absolutely. Not just Black life, Black women empowerment. And I'll have to say this, like most of my professional career has been through a recommendation from a Spelman woman. And it took me a long time I'm 57 now, but it took me maybe 10 years ago to realize BET, TV One, Upscale, Essence, Vogue Italia, all of these opportunities were through Spelman women.
Wow.
It's crazy, right?
I know because I got a cousin that went to Spelman.
Ask her.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Her. Yeah,
she's
that's why I
still down
mentored
there.
2 girls there. Yeah.
She's still down in Atlanta.
Oh, she's there. Yeah, I stayed there for 12 years too.
And that's what I was about to ask. Staying in Atlanta.
I did. I stayed there for 12 years.
Okay, so you're there watching also, and you spoke about it for a second, and I remember we spoke about Freaknik before with the April interview, but also not just Freaknik, but just watching the cultural
evolution of hip hop
explosion.
Evolution, yeah. From the ground up, literally. From the ground up, yeah. From the ground up.
Yes, from like really bass music, which I'm calling it bass music, more like Miami bass music, like Two
like
Live
Magic
Crew.
City, yeah.
To becoming organized noise to
really Jermaine
so
Dupri,
much more.
yeah, all of it. Yeah. I remember, I wish I could write a book about it, but I remember going to those hole in the wall concerts to see OutKast, and they were like, please, even Spike Lee, I'm old enough when Spike Lee was like, please come be on my movie set, begging students to come to be a part of his movie. What was School Daze? So we were a part of, really realistically helping these brands to grow. I mean, very realistically, from not only supporting their music, buying a CD from them, going to a concert, going to a show, to being on the set, to be a part of a group because Spike Lee needed a group in a movie. So we can say we were really a part of their evolution.
And that was always, when I talked to anyone that went to Morehouse or any of the 4 at that time.
Yeah, you got to include Howard and Fam, right?
I always say, no, I'm specifically talking about just the logistics of how Atlanta started to become this place and center of young Black culture.
Disruptors, that's what they call them. Disruptors, yeah. Yeah.
How to,
We're going to do it in a way that's going to be very authentic to Atlanta, which they did.
so watching that over those 12 years, what was the experience like witnessing that? And also, you're a writer, so how is this even impacting the way you approach your field?
Well, being around all them knuckleheads, because I call them knuckleheads, like the Jermaine Dupri's and the OutKast, it made me feel very entrepreneurial. And I have a few regrets. And me and Dream Hampton talk about this too. When she started her career, she went right to New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to Atlanta. I stayed in Atlanta, and I started my own magazine. I started working for Black magazines, So I stayed very rooted in Black in Atlanta. I wish that I would have left to go to LA or New York because I feel like I would have had more of a well-rounded experience when it comes to journalism. But for a good 15 years, I only wrote Black. And I think sometimes it hurt me in some ways, or I didn't get my first feature in Italian Vogue till I was 45. I think it would have helped me to bridge that gap to general market magazines had I left Atlanta. But in Atlanta, I felt very rooted in Black, very rooted in, at that time, hip hop, very rooted in entrepreneurship. Like, I could do this. I have a voice. So all of those things trickled down to me because it gave me the empowerment that I could do this. In a lot of respects, I tried and failed. I put a lot of money in and I lost a lot of money. I had a lot of experience. When I had a magazine, Heavy D in Uptown, they gave me my first ad.
Wow.
The very first time I went to New York was on a flight with DJ Eddie F. I'm trying to think. I had so many different firsts.
So before we even go there,
Okay.
the transition from now that we're in the mix talking hip hop, from house to hip hop, when does it take your heart where it's like, nah, I'm a part of this?
When every single club, because I was a clubber.
Mm-hmm.
I used to love house music. You can't listen to house unless you're in a club, right? So,
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not the clean up the house.
No, you can't put it on your
music,
car,
or it's
drive
not
through
the
traffic.
driving. Yeah, it's houses dancing in a club.
Energy. It's
Yes.
energy for sure.
It's group.
So I was a house head all through Spelman. I was a house head. So when they started changing the music, remember when the disco people, they would say, "Oh, you went to the club," and they started changing the music. It's the same thing with hip hop. They started playing way, way, way more hip hop and less house. Even they call them raves back then, but the clubs that would stay open at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they were playing hip hop. And Atlanta was very supportive of Atlanta hip hop. So that's where they would play. So you either enjoyed it, engaged with it, or you just left and went home. So we started enjoying and engaging hip hop on the radio, hip hop at the clubs, but really in the clubs. So that's really how I became a fan. And I fell in love with CeeLo Green. Oh my God. Like the roots, the soul of like soul food, those songs, that's how I really, because it would connect to me, that's how it connected. That's how I fell in love a lot with West Coast, because West Coast would always have that singing, that soulful singing. And that's how I ended up connecting to hip hop.
CeeLo. Now I gotta talk a
name?
little bit more. Goody Mob.
Goody Mob, thank you.
But
And
CeeLo
we used
Green.
to smoke some real, honey, smoke. You hear me? With
Definitely
OutKast
see
and
it.
Goody.
CeeLo, even to this day, just one of those other creative thinkers. You know,
Oh
the
my
connection
God.
between
Oh my God.
between OutKast and CeeLo all being in school together, and Rico Wade saying, "Let's put CeeLo in this
Living
group."
together too. They live together too.
Yeah, they are. You have facts I don't know, but I do know this. Even as a kid, like I'm hearing, Goody Mom's first album starts with CeeLo singing, and then it goes right into the Thought Process song. And the verse is just so, like, some of his lyrics are just like,
soul wrenching.
yeah.
I used to call it soul wrenching. Soul wrenching.
Where this
miss
is
Yeah,
deep,
I miss him.
very deep, very deep.
And he was so authentic. Like out of all of them, his voice was the most authentic. Yeah.
So that's connecting you. And then as it's a culture that also begins too, because around that time you have probably one of the biggest moments in hip hop history that changes the scope of hip hop. You have the Source Awards. And that Source Awards, a lot is going on.
They used to have music festivals called How Can I Be Down. Those are before the awards, but
Jack the Rapper
would come together and shit. Yeah.
And
all the hostility from those festivals came to the award show. Yeah.
Big time. And that was a moment that changed and transcended. And as you have what became, I guess, labeled as this East Coast, West Coast beef,
yeah.
You also have Andre stepping up saying the South got something to say. And it transcends in this moment of like, I couldn't even believe, like I'm a kid watching this, of all of what I'm watching that's playing out in the Source Awards. And OutKast leaves that statement, and that statement almost becomes like a rallying cry for so much more the South having something to say.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I had talked about wanting to have my own magazine. I think a lot of that mentality came from being in Atlanta at the time because they were very much about ownership. They were very much about Andre and Big Boy felt empowered because they were under a black label. They felt really empowered. I think to me, that's what Atlanta brought, the empowerment to be owners. Yes, they did create a different sound. Yes, they did. But they also really, really, really preached ownership. That's why a lot of the guys, they lived together. They slept together. Well, you know what I mean by slept together, but they slept in the same place. They collectively
lived in the dungeon.
Grew their careers. Yeah, they collectively grew their careers in a way that I had never seen. Obviously, we went through Motown, but Motown was under one kind of regime. But I see it a lot now when I speak at schools. A lot of the kids, once they graduate, they're like, I want my own brand. I want to do my own thing, which was very reminiscent of that time in Atlanta. They were going to get out and they were going to start their own labels. They were going to start their own sound. They didn't want to necessarily be a part of anything that was before them. They wanted to do something different.
And those relationships, because you can see I'm such a fan of just hip hop of that time, especially when it comes to OutKast and what was created with that organized noise sound. And in Rico Wade's basement of the dungeon, from the Dungeon family.
And it stank down there too. So.
I would imagine
weed, piss. Yeah.
I would imagine even I remember the what was the episode? I think it was the Rap City when Joe Claire went there. I was like, this does not look like a
fun place for girls.
No.
And we were like, I think a lot about the situations that I would be in as a young female journalist. In those situations, I never felt insecure. Never.
And that's what I was
in Atlanta.
I was just about to ask that, just on the strength of because hip hop is so
misogynistic.
Definitely the machismo in it, the ego in it.
Yeah.
Yes, the misogyny throughout it.
No, they helped me start my career. Like they introduced me to Andre Harrell. Those were that was my connection, and I will forever remember Andre Harrell for giving me my first ad for my magazine was called RPM. It was a little independent music magazine, but he gave me my first ad. He flew me out to New York for the first time, so I felt I'm like, I could do this. I could own a magazine, and it was because I think of the energy that was in Atlanta at the time. So
now I have to go to and start in a magazine. The photographers, the other writers. How did you go about
Spelman and Morehouse?
Wow.
They were all They were all from Spelman, all from Morehouse. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm guessing some of those early photographers that you gave a shot and the writers that you gave a shot have done all types of things now.
All types of things. Yeah, one of my best. He's my best friend, Raymond Boyd. He's in Chicago now, but all of his work is on. Well, he only takes pictures for Getty now,
Mm.
but all of his stuff and all of those TV ones, unsung, and all of those 50-year hip hop anniversaries are all of his images. Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing time, and I'm trying to think, did I pay anybody? I don't even know if I paid anyone, but we ran that magazine for 3 years. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So that 12 years, you in the A, stomping down.
Yes.
And now, where do you go after that 12?
I ran out I ran out of money with my magazine, and I came back home. And coming home, I said, okay, I want to try. And it's funny because my editor at the store is, shout out to Anselm Samuel, who's at Complex right now. But we were doing an article on Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes was turning 100, and I pitched a story to him about all of the artists that had used Langston Hughes's words at that time.
Mm.
And he was like, you should do a documentary. I think that would be dope. And he gave me the idea to do a documentary, which is what led me to New York. I wanted Talib Kweli and Mos Def. And when I went to interview them, Talib Kweli introduced me to the nonprofit that ended up funding my movie.
Wow. Now that, talk about
That's how I ended up in New York.
divine order.
Yeah, that's how I ended up in New York.
And before we shift there,
Okay.
as a person that takes on many projects myself, and it's all creativity. That's how I look at business. It's a form of creativity. And entrepreneurship is a form of creativity. Now, definitely the resources, it's not, needing $100,000 isn't like getting the green crayon per se.
But you got to figure out how to do it, right?
Exactly. So now I want to ask, just within that marriage of any time I hear a person says, okay, this creative venture, I didn't continue to pursue that. When you reflect on that, do you reflect on it as if your willingness not to, I guess, I don't want to say open up the scope or pivot at a time or see what new opportunities were available was something that you were just more dogmatic as like, I want to go about it this way? Or was it one of those things where it's like, I just don't want to continue to put in all of this effort, I feel like, because
I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't figure out how to make money. We were not salespeople. We were creatives.
Mm-hmm.
So we made a lot of really great connections. We got a lot of really great articles. But getting the ads was really hard for us. I didn't realize to keep a magazine up, you had to sell ads, and I wasn't a salesperson. So yeah, I just ran out of money, and I came home, and I still continued to freelance. Well, I started freelancing to make a living, and The Source was one of the publications that continued to offer me jobs. And just my back and forth with my editor at The Source. He's like, you should think about doing this.
So now I guess I want to take that snapshot of you in The Source for a second.
Okay.
What article writing at The Source, an interview with what artist do you believe was the most interesting to you over your time at The Source?
Oh, Talib Kweli for sure.
And now,
After I interviewed him, I wanted to be his best friend.
wow.
And then it was Warren G. I love Warren G too. Like they were some of the most intelligent motherfuckers I had ever heard. I had ever had a conversation with before in my life. I just learned so much. And it was from my conversation with Talib Kweli that we talked so much about Langston Hughes. Like he read so much literature. He had so much information. His lyrics were from research, and he wasn't just talking off the top of his head. And I had never met a rapper that had did it before. So I was really impressed by him, and I really wanted to work with him again in another facet. So yeah, my time at The Source allowed me to meet intelligent lyricists.
Okay.
I never knew them as intellects and intelligent. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'd have these conversations and we do an interview and then we go smoke weed, we go eat, and we do all of that. That happened with the source, where I actually got to spend time in their places with these guys. Most of them were men because I didn't interview a lot of women until a little much later in my career, but most of them were men. Yeah, and they were. Yeah, I'm not dumb. I have a degree. Yeah, all of this is for a reason. Yeah.
So in this arc, and just as a writer, when a person has that sit down, and I know things are so different now, but
Oh God.
things are still kind of the same. When do you know, like when you're sitting with who you're interviewing, and you're just having lunch or having a common conversation, how does that help develop a tone and an understanding for who you're writing about? Because oftentimes, now especially, but even then, people have the character and the persona that they're portraying.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the question that I'm asking is, how much of it is you are interviewing, Dwayne Johnson or interviewing The Rock? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. How would I know if I got to spend time with them outside of the interview? I usually got to see their authenticity. Um, I remember I used to be really mad because we would try, again, I was writing for The Source and Vibe and, what would be considered, even though Source isn't black, but they would consider black magazines. And then we would read like Tupac on MTV and he would be giving these really great interviews, philosophizing and everything. And he'd come to a black magazine and talk really negative and ghetto and disparaging the women and stuff. And I noticed that the difference between our coverage of some artists and a general market coverage of some artists, it would just be different. So when I started to do magazines, I would try to be smarter. I would try to ask intellectual questions just to see, are you going to rise to my level or are you going to go? And that to me made a big difference because I got to see, even though I didn't interview Biggie a lot, I look at Dream Hampton's interviews of the Biggies and stuff like that, but I saw a different side of them that they didn't show. And I really appreciated being able to spend time with them outside of the interview situation. And that to me helped me to form relationships that helped me to pivot my career when I went into TV and when I went into film, because I've done all of that stuff. Produced TV shows, I've produced events, I've produced red carpets. Those relationships and those initial one-on-one conversations translated into other things that I did in my career when it came to entertainment. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the documentary is you're jumping into
film, jumping with no experience, nothing.
What was that like for you?
It was a wonderful experience. It was where I met Jessica Care Moore. I never met Jessica Care Moore before I did this documentary. She was living in New York at the time, and I knew about her, but it helped me to really appreciate poetry and poems, and because we had a lot of poetry in the documentary. I was able to meet with development executives. I eventually sold a documentary to Stars in Black at the time, and the movie wasn't even done. So I learned negotiating, I learned contracts. It was such a great experience because Talib Kweli and Mos Def walked me into Stars. They walked me into California Newsreel that distributes my documentary now, where I get a check every 6 months. I've gotten a check every 6 months on that movie since 2000. So they've walked me into those doors. They walked me into those meetings. When I sold my first TV show to BET, it was because of a connection with Mos Def. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So at that point, now you got the bug for film and television. Are you still freelancing in magazines, or are you like, okay, let me put on the writer hat this way?
Not really, no. I'm not really writing. After I sold that documentary to Stars, I wasn't really writing as much, no. I was head first in TV and film, and I worked with a few shows with Tracy Edmonds on BET. Then I worked under Tiffany Williams, who is a huge executive producer over MTV. I worked with her on a few shows at TV One, and I kind of went through the Viacom family as a production assistant, a production coordinator. So it was a fun time because I was now living in New York.
And that's what I was going to also say. Living in New York at that time in television, and that snapshot of one of the last hurrahs of where cable television was.
It was the beginning of reality TV at that time. Yeah, we were doing like MTV Cribs and
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And scouting the location and television. Television.
Getting all the signatures from everybody. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is. I'm coming up on a reality show my cousin has me on, and we had to sign off on a lot of stuff and everything.
And everything in the shot has to be approved. Yeah, you can't show any logos or labels unless you get a deal from the brand.
Exactly. It's like they don't want me selling my Detroit is different
Not at
merch. No, I'm just messing. Oh, network. I'm just.
No, they want that ad money right there.
You got that right.
They don't want to promote
exactly.
your.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no.
See, they don't care about a
No,
black
absolutely.
man. I'm just messing with you.
But that's how I learned about product placement. Yeah, we did a lot of product placement back then for sure.
Okay, so in this space, what are you reading at the time? Because this relationship with writing you had for so long. What are you reading at the time, and what are you writing?
So I fell in love with Lynn Burnett. Do you know who Lynn Burnett is?
Mm-mm.
So Lynn Burnett
Lightning.
is he's a Detroiter. He grew up in Detroit. He used to work. He and I met at Brady Keys at Burger King on 8 Mile, but he eventually became the CEO of Vibe magazine. He started Vanguard Media with his partner Keith Klinkstels, and Vanguard Media ultimately published Honey. They published Heart and Soul. Let's see, what else did they publish? I can't remember the other one. Oh my God, that's crazy. Honey, Heart and Soul. There was another one I can't remember, but yeah, I started connecting with Lynn, and that kind of got me back into freelance writing. Yeah.
Okay. So you connected again.
Oh, Uptown magazine was Lynn Burnett's.
Okay.
He's a Detroiter.
I never knew that. Never knew that. Enlightened. Okay. So you connect back through magazines.
Keith and Lynn ran Vibe when they first started under Quincy Jones.
Quincy Jones.
Started.
Yeah.
They were the publisher and co-publishers.
Okay. All right. So you pick back up through magazines. Because
of Lynn, yeah, because of Lynn.
Through Lynn. Okay. And now with some time in television, how does that impact the way you're writing?
So I got married and divorced. That's how I left TV. That's another thing that I regret, because I left New York because I left my husband. So at the time, I was working in the sponsorship department at Essence magazine, and it was a crazy experience because we worked literally 18 hours a day.
Wow.
It was a crazy experience.
And that's for like the events, I'm guessing?
It was for the festival. It was.
Wow.
We had, I think, 13 sponsors at the time, and we would have weekly meetings with the sponsors. And we would hold them accountable for what they needed for the festival. And we would go back and forth to New Orleans to show them their footprint. It was crazy. It was just one of the craziest experiences in my life.
You say 18 hours.
Yeah.
That's
so
like the military or something.
Caught my husband cheating and got very emotional and ended up leaving New York and ended up leaving my job. So I regretted that because I kind of had to start all over. But that's how I ended up leaving New York. So at the time, I was working a 9-to-5 job. So when I left New York and came back home for a very short time, I started freelancing again.
So now Detroit, and you haven't really lived in Detroit
since I was 17. Yeah.
What was Detroit like in touching back down here for you?
Unwelcoming, unfamiliar. No one wanted to mess with me. No one knew who I was. No one knew that I had been writing for 10, 15 years. I kept having to introduce myself, and I felt I didn't stay here long. I couldn't get a job. There was no love at the Free Press. There was no love at Michigan Chronicle. There was no love at Hour or Metro Times. That stuff didn't happen till way later. I didn't get any love in in Detroit when I came back home after getting a divorce.
So
I was broken. Yeah,
this is definitely one of the climatic moments in life of the story.
it is. It was. I got an associate producer gig at Howard University, WHUT,
Okay.
their PBS affiliate.
Okay.
So that is how I got back in the game. Yeah, so I got
Okay.
a job in DC.
Another chocolate city. It's like if you lived in Oakland for 2 years, you just everywhere black people at.
I lived in Oakland.
You lived in.
But I did live in South Africa though.
See, I know South Africa, Mississippi, Atlanta.
I ain't lived in Mississippi though. I don't
You
know.
was down there.
Mississippi was hard. Yeah, that's
was
hard.
down there.
That's hard black living, right?
You was down there. It's like
My mama.
say
from
I was in
Mississippi.
Brazil. It's like, damn, you was just like the black correspondent. All right, so all right,
Where we at in the process in the storyline?
all right. We at DC.
We at DC. Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter was conceived in DC.
Oh, congratulations.
I was there for 5 months. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're there for 5 months, and now you're like, where you go?
Oh God, where did I go? Oh, we went to LA. Yeah. Another Spelman sister who was doing PR for Queen Latifah's show at the time. She was running Bounce TV because Bounce was just starting. And she was doing PR for Bounce, Queen Latifah. She's like, I need some help. And ended up going down there and helping her for a season. And she said, come on down here and help me with my company. And we ended up moving to LA. We were there for 4 years, yeah.
Okay. Now, with all of that, I definitely got to ask. I know I'm fast forwarding because you mentioned South Africa, and I want to hear that too. How you end up back in the D?
We came home for Christmas of 2019, and my daughter was in the fourth grade at the time, and she begged me to stay home. She was like, "Mom," because my contract in South Africa had ended, and she was like, "I really want to stay," and I was like, "Okay, if I get a gig, we'll stay." And I ended up getting a part-time job at the Southfield Public Library.
Okay.
And that's how we ended up staying.
Wow. Okay. And now on this new introduction to a lot of the places to freelance here.
Oh, yeah. It was amazing because in the last 5 years, I have written for Italia Vogue, Cosmo, Elle, Esquire, GQ, South Africa. I have had more international since I've been back home, yeah.
I got you.
For the last 5 years.
So it's like worldwide publications that aren't black. It's like, oh, come on in the door.
But it's all on black culture. It's all on black
Still
people.
on black people. Okay.
I think I might have written one article about general market. But it's all been black people. It's all been about black people.
And internationally, just in South Africa, what was it a different? I know you say that you see the style and the formula that is taken. Is there something different in the formula that you take there that you found in voice that connects to the people?
When I worked at GQ South Africa, they were very specific about American culture. They wanted me to write in the voice of a Black American woman. And I found that to be the case in a lot of the international magazines that I write for. They want you to write in the voice of America, which means that their readers are reading it because it's written by an American writer. So they wanted us to push American culture in the writing. So I wrote a lot about American artists, American Black artists, American culture, and explain Juneteenth, explain the Freaknik, or all kind of things that no one would know. They didn't even know what HBCU meant. It was very, very remedial, yeah.
And during this time, as you're speaking about topics like this, the internet, how, because clearly, definitely, magazine stands used to be everywhere.
Oh, yeah. The kids that I teach now, I teach 5th graders. I even teach 12th graders. They've never opened a magazine.
Yes.
Never.
So... And with blogging, especially with what I'm doing here, content creation, just the way that information carries, I still love a good article from a magazine.
I know, but we become a niche. We've become niche.
Yeah.
I was just telling somebody recently when I did a media training with Build Institute. And I was telling them, I can't remember how many times someone has said, hey, thank you for writing that article. Thank you. Like maybe once or twice out of the hundreds of articles that I've written. But online, yeah, people will DM me and say, oh, thank you for the article. But before that, nothing in print would hardly ever get any recognition. I mean, the artists, their publicist and their manager would read it, but it was hard to get any type of response and feedback from print articles. Yeah.
Okay.
So that feedback was very different.
So the feedback, yeah, because it's like sometimes you never know with feedback. People
Right.
don't mind.
It's like making a song. You know, if you're not in front of the audience, you never know. You never get any feedback, right? So you kind of got to be in front of people. And digital media allows you to be in front of people. You know that. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
You got to be in front of folks.
All day. What up, though? So, as we get closer to a close, let's talk a little bit about the creative visions now, because everything, you've done a little bit of a lot of creative media.
A lot.
What's the driving passion now? What's next? I know you got a book. I want you to talk about that.
I do.
But what right now what are like 2 or 3 of the things that it's like, okay, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. You don't have to get in any details, but what medium, what form, and just share something interesting about it.
I think I am where you'll probably be in maybe 10 years, where you just want to train, you want to teach people. And that's where I am. And I think because I've in this kind of like giving mentality, that has changed for me of how I approach Detroit, or how Detroit has approached me, because I'm willing to give. Like you said, I've done so much. And the average person that even knows me, my best friend, they don't even know half the stuff I've done. So I'm in this state now where I'm training, I'm teaching, I'm showing people how to do what it is that I do, because I have done a lot. And I've never had a path. I've never had anyone to hold my hand. I've had mentors in different sectors of careers. But if I could give somebody a pathway or a way to do something, that's kind of my passion right now. So I'm teaching at CCS. I'm teaching at Pencil. I'm teaching at the Build Institute. I'm teaching at Prosper Us. So I'm getting a lot of love that people want to know. How do you reach a media outlet? How do you speak to them? You know, how do you get in there? Or how do I tell my story? So,
okay. I'm with that.
Yeah.
All right. Your book.
I do a media directory every year that has over 600 magazine outlets and publications. I even have you in there, because I have a Detroit list of the top media outlets in Detroit. And you're on my podcast list.
Wow. I'm glad I'm getting the love out here. I'm glad I'm getting the love.
Yeah. So that's the book. It's called The Big Fat. It's called The Big Fat. It's a media guide. And if you are, whether you're a journalist, sometimes publicist, or even a small business, and you want to know how to get more media exposure, you want to know how to get to the right people, that directory is going to help you.
So with that,
Yes.
I definitely have to I have to ask this question. As a person that, we do these events and everything, some of them catch, some of them don't. I do want your take on, what do you think for an event getting media? What's the best approach? That's one question. In a classic Detroit is Different style. I want to add more to this. Well, let's just get your response and then I'll get my rebuttal.
For you should have specific media events. You should have events where all you're doing is bringing in the media, because you do so much. You need to form relationships with them. Like the young lady at the Free Press that writes about business need to be your best friend, need to be in your Rolodex. I would start to have events where I'm only inviting media out so that I can have relationships with these media outlets, because you need to talk to them like almost every month, every couple of months. You should not be reintroducing yourself to these people at all. So your focus should be on forming relationships with them.
And
Feed them, give them gifts. I mean, do all of that everybody else ain't gonna do.
It's unique you say that, as that's exactly how,
because you're not just doing
worked.
one-time runoff events. You do events all the time. So
yeah, that
it's
is
like you sending a press release to your friend.
Yes, because that's what I found works best. It's relationships. It's relationships.
But how do you form the relationship?
Relationships. And yes, how do you form them? And how do you meet them in passing?
You got to know about people, yeah.
Yeah. And the tone of it, as I often say, I'm in this interesting space because I do not consider myself a journalist. I don't consider myself a historian, but I am telling a lot of these stories.
You're all of those things, yeah. You're all of those. All of those, yeah.
See.
I mean, a storyteller really encompasses everything, but you're all of those things.
I'm a black man from 12th Street that likes to have conversations.
And conversations is how you get to know people.
Now, I do have to ask this too within the fiction. What is the movie script that's in your back pocket? And I'll share with you the script that I think would be really cool.
I got so many. Oh my goodness. Why I left my husband in New York. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the story. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the story.
That's nonfiction.
Me leaving New York. Yeah.
That's
in the middle of a bunch of crazy. Yeah.
Okay. What's fiction?
Shit. The retelling of the Book of Job.
Interesting.
Andre 3000 is playing the devil.
Wow. Now that is very interesting.
Yeah, that's my script. It's already written. It's already written.
I always thought, because I like heist movies, and I always thought that it would be very interesting if someone wrote a heist movie about some of the first people that broke into pyramids. And frame it just like today's heist movies are, where it's like
they planned it months in advance.
Yeah,
he got his crew together to get the right people in place to do the right thing.
Yes,
everybody had a job to do.
Yep, and they get caught.
And somebody was like a relative of somebody that's buried. Yeah,
I think that would be
yeah.
Because
they get caught and they leave something, so they got to go back. Yeah.
Oh, that would be very
somebody's granddaughter got to go back.
You all see the creativity. I'm telling you, I would watch that movie. I would watch the series because I know it was people breaking into pyramids. It's like, how you break into a pyramid? Like, what are they? It's like moving the stone itself. You know what I'm saying? This isn't.
But they black, so
bank.
They figure it out, right?
I know exactly. It's like
that's how we started the conversation.
It's like your great grandfather working, and it's like my great grandfather left
left a specific chip, a specific hammer or something. That's the only thing I can use to get up in it.
On the scroll of the East Point when it's like this is Mission Impossible.
Yes,
Mission Impossible. The pyramid. This is interesting. Absolutely. Right here. I think.
I think it needs to be a movie on Coleman Young too, for sure. We got to do because I was named after his Darralynn Bowers, who used to work with Coleman Young. I was named after her.
Darralynn Bowers.
My mom went to school with Darralynn Bowers, who used to be a part of Coleman Young's. She served some time in prison too.
I'm very aware of her. My godmother, Orthea Barnes, introduced me to her one day. She's like, we going to Darralynn Bowers Christmas party.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm named after her.
I did not put two and two together, but that makes sense. So we close out with your classic Detroit is Different questions.
Okay.
First, very first car. Year, make, and model. Year you got it.
Ah, shit. 1987. It was... Ford Mustang.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Where's the first
I'm a Ford girl. Even though they said they rolled back their DEI initiatives, but I'm a Ford girl.
Yes.
All of my cars have been Fords.
Got you. Your granddad was like, what are you doing? This is a Chrysler household. What are you? I'm just messing with you. All right. So, where's the first place you went when you got it?
Lou's Deli on McNichols.
Oh, so classic. I was there. I was there this past Friday.
Parking lot.
I was there this past Friday. The spirited exchange of the quick service customer service management.
The sandwiches are $6, and I'm like $6. Remember?
Oh, Now it's like 15.
I know. For the small one.
I know. It's like, give me a merry-go-round.
Right. I want a Denny Moore.
Okay. I'm with it. So, next question. You're the DJ at the end of the fireworks, Woodward and Jefferson. You get to play 2 songs. What you playing?
Oh, shit. Trick, Detroit. What's it? I can't think of. Shit.
Welcome to Detroit City?
Yes.
Okay.
I might go back and play my little Diana Ross. Ain't no mountain high enough.
Okay.
Nothing can keep me.
I'm
Keep
with
me
it.
from you. I gotta go old
Wow.
school. I gotta go a little old
Okay.
school. Yeah.
All right. That is an interesting combination. Boy, oh boy, you'll be on the blend. You'll be on the blend. I'm with it. All right. Last question.
Okay.
You can rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
Oh wow. Should I name him after Leonard Burnett, the former publisher of Vanguard Media? Yeah, Leonard Burnett. A lot of people don't know that brother, but he did a lot for Detroit. Yeah, famous publisher. Or what about Alan? What's his name? He owns Weather and he owns the Griot from Detroit. Why can't I think of?
The attorney?
No, he's an entertainment dude. He used to be a comedian. He owns the Weather Channel.
Oh, Brian Allen.
Byron Allen.
Oh, Byron Allen.
Byron Allen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another Detroiter.
I definitely, yes.
Yeah, he's
Byron
the publisher
Allen.
of the Griot too.
Okay.
Byron Allen.
Okay. There we go. Byron Allen.
Leonard Burnett.
Okay. See, it's in the media. Yeah, that'll definitely inform some folks.
Absolutely.
It's like, let me get $1, Byron. All right. With that being said, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been fun.
I love it. I love it.
Absolutely.
Peace.
Peace.
That's a
Detroit is different. Detroit is different. Culture and life we live in.